Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to watch the video today. Always appreciate that. And guys, today we're going to be talking about one of the topics that I think is probably one of the top 10 considerations that determine the success of an angler. I don't care whatever, any level that you're on, just a fun fisherman, pro fisherman, whatever. And that is, how long do you fish a spot before you decide that you need to leave? How long should you stay on a spot? How long should you fish it before you leave? That is the big question in everybody's mind anytime they go fishing. And I got some good tips and advice I'm going to give you guys on this video that might sort of build you a good foundation on how to make those decisions the best. Also, guys, quick reminder, Tackle Warehouse has got a Labor Day sale on everything on the website there. 15% off on almost anything on the website. So if you guys are looking to get some good deals on tackle, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of the video. If you guys use that link, a good way to support intuitive angling here, and much appreciated. Okay, guys, that's the big question in bass fishing forever. It's like, how long do I stay? How long do I fish a spot before I leave? Should I leave this spot, or should I change techniques, or should I leave the spot and change techniques both? That's a big determination when you're talking about finding and locating bass, unless you're spotlighting for bass. If you're fishing like real bass fishermen should fish, that is on your mind every single day on the water. So here's some tips and advice to remember about how long to fish a spot before you decide to leave it. Now, the main consideration that you have to determine on any fishing spot is the potential of that area. You have to be able to read potential, and usually potential is dictated by how much cover is in an area and the diversity of that cover. So in general, the more cover that you have, or the more diverse the cover is, the better that area has as far as the potential to catch fish, and therefore you have to stay there longer. So say, for example, let's talk about like a quarter mile, or let's talk about a 200 yard stretch of shoreline. Now, if you have a shoreline that, say, is 200 yards long, and there's lily pads down the whole length of it, or there's grass beds down the whole length of it, or there's lay down trees scattered everywhere down there, or there's a bunch of boat docks, that area has a huge potential. There's a big potential there because there's a lot of different type of cover, and you have to figure out how to break down that cover and the appropriate techniques to fish under that situation. That is one scenario. The other scenario, let's say you have another 200 yard section of bank, and it's nothing but a straight rocky bank or a straight pea gravel bank with no cover on it. On a bank like that, you don't have the potential to hold a large number of fish unless the wind has to be blowing in there just right, or cloud conditions have to be right. But there's not enough cover or diversity of cover to really have to stay there to a long time to figure out if there's going to be fish there. So say, for example, we have a bank that doesn't have any cover on it. It's a long pea gravel or rocky bank. If we make one pass down that particular bank, say with like a crankbait or spinnerbait or whatever the appropriate lure is for that particular condition, and if we don't get a bite, if we don't catch any fish, that's a good sign that you need to leave. You fished it long enough. If there was many fish on that bank, just covering water in that open area, you're going to pick up a few. So if you go down that open area, not get a bite on your first pass, at that point I would leave it. Okay, now let's go to the other end of the situation. Let's say that you have a 200 section of bank there, and it's got 50 boat docks on it, and you make one pass down that particular bank with, say, pitching a jig around the boat docks. If I felt the fish were on boat docks and the conditions were conducive to it, I wouldn't leave it at that point. I would make another pass, maybe halfway down it, with a different presentation. I may skip a wacky rig underneath it, or I may run a crankbait down the side of the dock, or I may go to flipping a creature bait instead of a jig. And the reason that I'm going to stay in an area like that is it takes longer to break down and really figure out the technique that the fish want in that area, because there's a lot of different techniques that could possibly work. Plus the fact that you have a lot of cover there, that's going to hold bass. And I don't care what lake that you're on. You could take any lake in the country, and if you got a 200 yard section of bank with docks on it, or stumps, or laydowns, or whatever, unless the water is like a mud pit or something like that, there's going to be bass there. You just have to figure out, the technique that it's going to take to catch them, maybe time of the day. So to make a long story short, as far as how long should you fish an area before you leave, Let the amount of cover and the diversity of cover dictate that. In simple terms, the more and the diverse cover that you have, the longer you need to stay on a spot, and the less cover that you have, the shorter time to spend on a spot. And ultimately, you have to let the fish decide, because if you're getting some bites, that's a good indicator there's more fish there, and a lot of times you can come back through an area with a different technique and catch even more fish. But if you go through an area with the halfway appropriate technique, let's say for example it's October and there's a rocky bank there and the wind's blowing on it real nice and you got some cloud cover, everything's conducive to the fish ought to be biting, and you make a pass through there with like a shallow running crankbait and don't get a bite, that's a good indication you need to pick up and leave and try a different type of area. So anyway guys, hope that makes sense and hopes it allows you guys to have less wasted time in the water, and we'll check in later. See y'all.